Um, Oof. To get started, we'll open up a folder in VS Code, and the first thing we'll do is to create our HTML file. Let's name it index.html. Let's generate our boilerplate code, and then we'll change the title to animated login form. In the body of our HTML, we want to create a div with a class name container. Inside our container, we'll create our form element, and inside our form, we'll first of all bring an h1 where we'll pass in the text login. Right beneath our h1, we'll create a div with the class name text field. Now this div is what's going to be holding our input and our label. So we'll create the input and the label. Good. Over here, we'll create the username label. We are going to duplicate this text field div so that we have one for the password as well. Then we'll create a div with the class name fgpass. This is going to represent our forgotten password. Having created our forgotten password, we would create an input element which is going to be our submit button. We'll give it a value of login. Right beneath that, we'll create a div to hold our sign up link. Good. So we are done with our HTML for this project. We'll then move on to create our CSS file. Let's call our CSS file styles.css. After creating our CSS file, the next thing we have to do is to link it to our HTML file. So we'll do that by moving into the HTML file, and right beneath the title tag, we'll link our styles.css using the link tag. And we are done. So we can head over to the styles.css and style our file. But before we do that, let's check out our HTML in the browser. Good. So this is our HTML, and what we would do is to split the screen between our browser and our text editor. Boom. Now we can style with ease, so that whilst we are styling, we can see what's going on. The first thing we'll do is to remove every margin and every padding. We'll set our box sizing property to border box, and for this project we want our font family for everything to be in Vedana. Great. Alright, the next thing we are going to do is to style our container class. We'll give it a width. We'll give it a width of 100%, a height of 100 viewport height, and we'll display everything in the center using the flex property. So display flex, justify content center, align items center. Boom, and there we have it. Everything of ours has been centered. One other thing we would want to do is to give our container class a background property, and with this background property we'll give it 120 degrees, boom, and there we have it. We have everything centered in the screen. One other thing we'll do is to give our background, boom, and there we have it. We have everything centered in the screen. One other thing we'll do is to give our container class a background, and for this one we'll give it a background linear gradient. So we want our gradient to move 120 degrees, so it will move 120 degrees from the top to the bottom, and our first color would be B9297D. Our second color will be 10165F. And our third and final color will be 156962. Just like that. So we have our background colors set. Now for our form, we will give it a background color of white. Boom, so we can see each element clearly. We'll then move on to style our H1. And for the H1, the first thing we want to do is to center it. So we'll give it a text align of center, which will move it to the center of our form. Good. We'll also give it a margin of 10 pixels top and down and 0. This will just create some separation between it and the next elements, the elements around it. Then we'll change our color, and for our color we want to use our blue, the blue we used in our gradient. Beautiful. I think it's looking good. The next thing we'll style is our form text field. Now for our form text field, we want to give it margin bottom. We want to create some separation between them, so we give them margin bottom of 30 pixels, right? Boom, and we can see it just like that. We also want to give it a position of relative. Sorry, this is because we'll later on be positioning our labels relatively to the text field. Moving on, we want to give it a border bottom of 1 pixel solid, and let's do that quickly. border bottom of 1 pixel solid, and we want to just thin out the line, right? So we'll give it a color of AD. Good. So we can see the bottom there. Very beautiful text, right? Then let's move on to styling our inputs. For the inputs, we'll make the width 100%. We'll give it a height of 40 pixels. And let's give it a padding of 0 on the top and 5 pixels on the right and left. Now our form is not looking great currently, so let's head back here and we'll give it a padding of 0 on the top and bottom and about 40 pixels on the left and right, and boom, that looks much better now, so we can see clearly what we are doing. Alright, let's head back to styling our input. Moving on from the padding, the next thing we'll do for our input is to define the font size and the border. We don't want any border on our inputs. At the moment they are not looking so great, so we'll do a border of none. Good. Then the next thing we'll do is we'll give it a font size of about 16 pixels so that our text would be quite large. Hello. Okay, this is the password, like hello. I think the font size is better now. Okay, yeah, I think it's good. It's very good. It's very good. Let's head on. So we also want to give it an outline of none, so that when we hover over it, when we are inputting text into it like this, we no longer have that outline, that very annoying outline, right? So we are basically done for our input at the moment. Let's head on to style our labels. For the label, we'll give it a position of absolute, and we'll give it a top of 50%, and let's say for the left we'll give it 5 pixels. We want it 5 pixels to the left. Good. So that's the starting position of our font. Let's refresh this so that boom. So that's the starting position of our labels. We want them 50% to the 50% to the top, and then 5 pixels from the left. We'll give it a color. Let's make it a little bit lighter. Let's say, so give it, let's use AD. Yeah, that one. Good. So that makes it a little bit lighter. Then from there we'll just put a transition on it, so that anytime we are putting in some values into our input field, it will just transition to the top. It will move up slightly. All right, and just before we go, let's give it a cursor pointer event of none. Good. So moving on, anytime we are inputting something into our text field, anytime we are providing an input, let's say as we type our password, we want the label to move to the top. We want it to transition to the top. So that's what we are going to do just now. So in order to achieve that effect, what we'll do is that we'll have to specify the state, which is this, and we'll select our label. Let's duplicate this line of code, and we'll do it this way. We change the top. Initially it was 50%, but now we will do it minus 10 pixels, and we'll also give it a color transition. So let's have it like this, and we'll use our initial pink, this one, the one we used over here. Okay, so now if we hit, boom, you see that it moves to the top. This transition here is what makes it so smooth. Let's head back to our HTML and let's make this our input required. Very important. And when we come back to the CSS, instead of having focus here, we'll have valid. So what that will do is that anytime we have text in our input, our label will not collapse, right? But if this was focus like it was initially, you will notice that it has collapsed, just like that. So we have to keep this as valid. Good. So we have styled our input and our labels successfully. Let's now move on to style the other parts of our form. Good. The next thing we are going to do is to style this forgotten password here. Alright, so in our HTML we give it a class of fgpass. So let's just copy it and head over to the CSS. Beautiful. The first thing we'll do is to give it a text align of center, and this will just position it in the center of our form. It will align it to the center of our form. The next thing we want to do about our forgotten password is to give it a cursor of pointer and then to change the color. Let's make it a little bit lighter, so we'll set the color to ADAD, and we would give it a cursor of pointer. Finally, we want to separate it from this login button, so we'll give it a margin, the top 0, and to the right we'll give it 0 again, and to the bottom we want to give it a margin of 20 pixels and 5 pixels to the left. Boom, there we have it. as beautiful as it can get. Now on hover, we want to give it a text decoration of underline, and we want to also set the color to a beautiful pink. So when we hover over it, boom, just like that. The next thing we'll do is to style our submit button, which is this button right here. So in order to select it this time around, we use the attribute selector. We'll give it a width of 100%, a height of 50 pixels. Oh, sorry. Let's set the height property to 50 pixels. Then we'll give it a border radius of 25 pixels. Boom. Let's also give it a background color. We set it to the color blue, our blue. Let's change the color of the text to white, and we'll give it some font weight of about 700 pixels. Sorry, of about 700. The next thing we want to do is to give it a cursor of pointer. Very necessary. Let's set the outline to none as well. Boom. Let's give it a border of none. Good. Finally, let's style this sign up link here, this div we have at the bottom here. So we'll head over to our styles.css and we'll begin to style it. Let's give it a margin of 30 pixels top and bottom, and 0 on the right and left. Let's gray out the text. Let's give it a color of AD. Good. We want the font size to be 16 pixels. Now for the link in our sign up link, we want to change the color. So let's give it our blue color, and we'll have text decoration none. However, if we hover upon it, we want to give it a text decoration of underline, and there we have it.